Who was a hired church organist but would sneak out during sermons for cigarette breaks? Well, today I want to tell you about a French composer by the name of Gabriel Faure. Gabriel was born in a little town in the south of France in 1845. His father was a school inspector and they had great dreams for Gabriel, but not music per se. But then he started playing music. By the age of only four, he was picking out his own melodies on the harmonium. So by the time he was 9, his family decided to send him to Paris, to the École Niedermeyer, which was a music school, but they specialized in church music. So that's where he went. Going to boarding school so young and being separated from home really shaped who he was for the rest of his life. And now we are going to have a separation of who he is in public and who he is privately. Well, at school, he was studying organ, piano, harmony, and composition. He had many mentors, but his most important one was Camille Saint-Saëns, who I've already talked about. He learned about all the great musics. He learned about Bach and Mozart and Schumann and Liszt, and this really stuck with him. After graduating school, he got a job as a church organist. Now, he himself was not a very devout Christian of any kind, but he did need the money, so he would go play, and then during the sermons, he would sneak out, have his cigarette breaks, and then come back in at the end. He would leave an assistant in the middle, so if there was a sudden need for an organist, they would come and get him. Also, he had many wild nights, and he would show up early in the morning in the same clothes that he wore the night before, because it had gotten too late to go home. His public image was so good. He was quiet, he was polite, he was a stand-up guy for the most part, but now his personal life, it was turbulent and crazy. He had numerous affairs with singers that he would accompany or students. He was, you could say, emotionally somewhat intelligent, but definitely commitment shy. We have letters of him that he wrote, and he was very romantic and very passionate, but unable to have any emotional stability. And although these affairs were frequent, they were always very discreet, and unless you knew, like you knew, you wouldn't know. Now, in 1883, he entered an arranged marriage with the daughter of a sculptor named Marie. This marriage was not great. They had 2 sons, and they ended up living separate lives. Most of their correspondence was through letters. He was not what we would call a flamboyant alcoholic. He was a functioning alcoholic, but he did struggle with excess, both smoking and drinking. A lot, but he was very good at keeping up appearances. Unlike some of these other composers I've talked about, he was great. His habits rarely exploded into some scandal. People just didn't even really know. Despite his personal life being chaotic and incredibly unrestful, his working life, what he was offering, that was the opposite. That was great and going well. He composed a lot of sacred music. That's what he was trained for. He also composed piano music and choral works, chamber music, and he wrote a requiem that people really love. Often a requiem is really sullen and down and scary because it's about death. But his requiem, he looks at death very differently, and it's peaceful and calm and really lovely, kind of without judgment. It's just like, this is where we are at the end of our life. In 1905, he had a great opportunity. He became director of the conservatory in Paris, and he really changed how things were done. He modernized the methodology, and he himself taught. He had great students. Maurice Ravel was one of his students. So was Nadia Boulanger and Ionescu. He had phenomenal students, and so in that way, his work and his influence continued on for a long time. As he got older, he started having hearing problems. He wasn't going completely deaf, but the very highs, they were painfully sharp. And then the very lows, they just got muddled. He couldn't completely tell what note was what. And so his later compositions we can hear are very different because of this. His harmonies are more spare, more elusive, and they feel very introspective. In 1924, at the age of 79, he passes away. He was given a state funeral as he was a big deal in the world of music. Where in his personal life, his life could be chaotic and crazy, alcohol and smoking and many affairs. His music is absolutely the opposite, and it feels calm and collected and lovely to listen to. Go and listen to some Gabriel Faure.